You are listening to This Makes Me Happy, episode 36. Today's episode is the first in a two-part conversation with Ryan Starr. Ryan is the host of High Res, a one-on-one podcast with creatives in the Philadelphia advertising community about the experiences that have helped shape their careers and influence their work. Make sure to tune into High Res and listen to the second part of our conversation, which drops on Tuesday, November 8th. For those of you in the US, it's a great listen while you stand in line to vote. Go to highresπod.com or search for High Res in iTunes. Welcome to This Makes Me Happy, a podcast about people and what makes them happy. I'm your host, Bernardo Margulis. I'm a designer, art director, and educator, and I'm the principal of This Makes Me Happy, a design studio where I help my clients with branding and visual communications. I'm very happy to present This Makes Me Happy, the podcast, where each week I chat with a different person about what makes them happy. My guests come from all walks of life, and each of them shares their own personal happy stories. Join us every week for a unique conversation. Hello, today I have a very special guest with me. I'll be talking to Ryan Starr. Ryan is a senior art director at Agency M and the host of High Res, a one-on-one podcast with creatives in the Philadelphia design community. And Ryan is going to interview me for his podcast. So if you're enjoying this conversation, which I know you will, tune in tomorrow to High Res Tuesday. If you listen after Tuesday, it'll already happen. I'll be talking with Ryan. So this week we'll have a double feature. Ryan is on my podcast today. Ryan will be on my podcast tomorrow. So that should be a good back-to-back. Ryan, how you doing?
It's a crossover event.
It's a crossover event.
It's like those old school Friday nights, where you see Step by Step and then Family Matters.
Yeah. Well, and now, or more so when, like New Girl had, what was it, Brooklyn 911?
Brooklyn 999. Yeah. Or Brooklyn 99. Yeah.
99, we can keep it more contemporary,
I'd like to keep it in TGIF.
Okay. All right. We can keep it more old school. How you doing, Ryan?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing well. Else from the intro, is there anything else you want people to know about you?
No, I think you hit it. Yeah.
All right, then let's get to it. What makes you happy?
Well, I had a little bit of lead time to think about this, and I'm sure this is not the first time you've heard this. It's a pretty hard question to kind of sit with and just be like, oh, well, what does make you happy? And then you kind of start to analyze it a little further and be like, well, is that what makes me happy? Or is it, you take it a step further. Anyone who listens to my show knows I'm a big pop culture junkie, and I'm always talking about like Star Wars or Marvel Comics or a novel I'm reading, anything like that. And it would be very easy to sit here and just say like, oh, Star Wars makes me happy, and it does. It truly does. Like,
and you get out to it on your show a lot.
Well, yeah, sure. But it was like it's just kind of thinking about it further. I think storytelling is what makes me happy. And I think that is what it ultimately comes down to. I mean, just even like looking at like the field we're in and what we need to do with design. And I feel like the best kinds of design are the kinds that tell a story, through visuals, through copy. And we have a very unique job because we need to keep it brief and we need to hit them very fast, whereas, films, books, I love diving into those mediums and just even taking it a little bit further. There's this podcast, I don't know how familiar you are with it, Never Not Funny with Jimmy Pardo.
No, but I'll have to look it up.
It's a comedy podcast, very much like this, long form, conversations. And he had a guest on, Diedrich Bader, who I don't know if you're familiar with him. He's an actor.
I'm terrible with pop culture. So whenever you bring all this stuff up on your podcast, I was like, oh, I have to look it up.
You hit that 30-second skip button.
No, I listened through it, but then I have to look it up and see what am I missing.
All right, well, look up Diedrich Bader. He's the actor, if you've ever seen Office Space. He's the neighbor on the other side of the wall from Peter. All right, we'll move it on.
No, keep going. I like to learn.
We'll cut this out in post. But he was on Jimmy Pardo's show, and he got on this riff, and I don't know how much of it was him making this up or how much of it was based on something he read, but he was talking about storytelling and how, evolutionarily speaking, we're like, set up to be hunters. And if we were like tracking something in the woods, like, we would look for clues and we would like rely on our intuition and follow those clues and those signs to their eventual end. And that's what we're looking for in stories. And, we're looking to hit these beats. I thought it was really interesting, especially in the context of why I get obsessed with, to wrap it back around to Star Wars, and we've talked about this on my show ad nauseum, but how bad the new trilogy of Star Wars movies was, the prequels. Star Wars fans kind of love to really look at those movies, and some defend them staunchly, some hate them, some loathe them, some want to disown them entirely from the from the filmography. But
you're talking about episode 1, 2, and 3, or the newer
1, 2, and 3. No, the new ones set everything back. Seems like everyone's back on court. Everyone's like, all right, I can't think I've heard very minor negative things about the new one. It seems like everybody's right back on track with, and I think even the people making the movies now are even kind of we're just going to leave those 3 movies alone.
Forget about them.
Yeah, let's just forget about them, move on. But it's funny how much I think Star Wars fans, and myself in particular, kind of look at those movies and go, well, what would have made that a good movie? And going back to what I was saying about what Diedrich Bader was saying on the show, is that whole idea of evolutionary. We want things to make sense, and we're following clues. And when we see a character arc not be fulfilled, or or make a decision that feels wrong to us, you start to go, well, why did they do that? Why couldn't they do that? And you sit there and I find myself sitting in bed at night. I'll be like, if I was making episode 1, I would have done this, and this would have made it a better movie. And I know for a fact that there are other Star Wars fans who do the exact same thing. And, and just recently, again, talking pop culture and, nerd culture in particular, but I really wanted Batman versus Superman to be a good movie. I grew up on Batman comics. That was bread and butter. I loved Batman. And I wasn't really that crazy about the idea of the whole Batman versus Superman antagonism. That comes from The Dark Knight Returns, a comic book that Frank Miller wrote in the late 80s. And it was really a turning point for Batman in terms of defining him as a dark character. I liked the book. I liked it a lot more when I was older and could understand it a little bit more and put it in more of a context. When I was a kid, I was just kind of this is weird. But I was never that in love with the antagonism between Batman and Superman in that story, which is where a lot of the inspiration for that movie came from. But everything they were saying, the build up to the movie, everything the filmmakers were saying, everything the actors were saying, everything that got kind of teased out about it, I was like, okay, all right, I'm on board. Yeah, maybe I wouldn't have picked Ben Affleck, but I don't hate him the way. At one time, Josh Brolin's name was being thrown around, and they were going for an older, more aged, more beat up Batman, and I was like, I could see that for sure. Now seeing the final product, I don't know that he would have been a good choice for that, but when you were talking about it purely in theory, I was like, yeah, Josh Brolin, yeah, why couldn't it be him, But yeah, and then the end result was just this horrible mess. And it's funny, I was really critical of the movie, and then they came out with this ultimate director's edition. It's still a bad movie, but they added in, but at least I think it's elevated from a bad movie that I won't watch to a movie that I know is bad, but I can at least be entertained by, because they added in these scenes, and it was some connective tissue that made things make sense. And again, going back to you're watching this and you're like, what's this character's motivation? Why are they doing this? Where did this come from? And that's what I really enjoy about storytelling, is kind of seeing that be fulfilled in a good story. When you have a good book or, a good movie, and you're seeing all those beats being hit, and it's satisfying. And there's something so great about that. And I've gotten a reputation of being a spoiler, particularly around The Office.
And it's on your website loud and clear.
Yeah. Well, as I said, I've been thinking about this a lot. And I think that's, if I had to analyze myself a little bit, I think it's because I just get so excited about, when I see something that's really good, I want to share it, and I want to talk about it, and I'll be like, and then they did this, and then they did that, and never realize this person might want to experience it for themselves, just get too excited about it. I just saw 10 Cloverfield Lane over the weekend. It was a really great movie. I'd been excited to see it for a while. It definitely lived up to my expectations of it, and I came in on Monday and I was like, I could barely get through. I mean, I work with people. It's like I barely get out. I saw a movie over the weekend and that was too much information, like I don't even have to name what the movie was. So I didn't want to get into the details because I was like, it's definitely like you will not know where it's coming from 1 minute to the next. You think you got it figured out and then it kind of twists on you again. And, I just get so excited about it. But yeah, so I definitely say storytelling is a big part of what makes me happy. And I think it goes back even to, my youth. And I mean, obviously I was into Star Wars as a kid. I was into comic books as a kid, but I was a big reader as a kid as well. And there was a time where I definitely thought I'd be a writer. I definitely thought that that would be the life I pursued. And I think I let the wrong people talk me out of it, to be honest.
How come? Why do you think you were going to be a writer, and why?
Well, because that's all I did. I used to just write. I just, as a kid, I used to come up with stories of my own, and then sometimes they would just be horrible Stephen King knockoffs, and like I was into horror, and I love Stephen King, and I'd write these short stories, and they'd always be macabre in some way. And I grew up in like North Central PA, and it's a very working class area, and I think for me to say to somebody up there, like, oh, I'm going to grow up, I want to be a writer and write books. It's like, I don't know anybody who writes books. So that sounds unrealistic. And maybe it is unrealistic to some degree, but at the same time, and I don't want to make it sound like, I certainly don't want to make it sound like somebody squashed my dreams. I think I just feel like I started thinking, well, if this isn't a way to make a living, then what can I do? And design came to me very late in high school. And I wasn't like the kid that was in 4 years of art. And, if you couldn't find Ryan, he was in the art room. That wasn't me. But I was in the yearbook room. I loved doing layouts. Like that was really how I got into design. And it was an English teacher who went to my college, well, what eventually became my college. And she took a tour and she was like, we took a tour of the graphic design program and I really thought of you. And I was like, oh, really? And I was like, I'll have to check it out. And I ended up going there. And so it was, and this was an English teacher who loved me. Like she used to try to get me in. She was the head of drama. She used to try to get me into the plays, and I always would be like, I'm too busy. And I was probably just too scared. But like it was an English teacher who said, oh, maybe you should try design. So
even though you were good at writing and
I think I was good at writing, but, and I never really let it go. And I actually just even sitting here saying it out loud, I kind of feel like it's bullshit to say like, oh, and then, somebody told me, oh, you probably can't do that. And so I didn't do it. It's like, well, if I really wanted to do it, I would have done it, so.
Well, at that age, you're impressionable in a different way. And
I guess, but and I don't want to say I didn't let it go. I haven't let it go. I don't write anymore the way that I would like to, or I kind of envisioned myself writing. But I did, like in my 20s, I decided I was going to write a book, and I did. And that book sits squarely on a hard drive that will probably never be read by anybody.
What is it about?
You know what? It was right in the middle of me reading things like The Adventures of Cavalier and Clay and The Corrections. And I was aiming for something very lofty and probably for sure didn't hit the mark. But at the same time, like it was such a great experience. It probably took me like 4 years to write. I wrote a full draft that was like, 200,000 words at least, like where I was like, okay, this is way too long. There's too much here. But it was like a nice jumping off point because I just cut like hell for the second draft, like got rid of the backstories of someone's childhood. It was like, you don't need this. And it was a very layered novel. There was a lot of, this sounds so, I was going to say there's a lot of depth to it. But there was, like there was like 3 or 4 main characters to the story. And there was a lot going on in it, and I did a lot of research, and it was funny because I was just talking with somebody today because November is National Write a Novel Month, and have you ever heard of that? Or
yeah,
anyone who's done that.
They do the 30 books, 30 novels. There's an association, and then they partner with designers to do book covers for some of those, and I participated in it last year.
Oh, okay. Oh, that's really cool.
Yeah.
I didn't know that. I didn't know that aspect of it.
Yeah, if you follow Debbie Millman, do you know?
Yeah.
She's a liaison, and she posts on Facebook, I need 30 designers, and I just replied to it. And last year I got it. I don't know this year because she got way too many responses. But,
really? So did you have your choice of what?
No,
book
they just
to do?
pair you. They send you a book. All they give you is a 1-paragraph description, and you do the cover. And I did the cover, and I did hand lettering, and I just had fun with it. And then a week later, they're like, we gave you the wrong author. Can you hand letter it again? And I was like, all right. I mean, it wasn't complicated hand lettering. It was more calligraphy, but yeah, I had to like rewrite it.
Did you read the book?
It didn't exist. Because it was the National Novel Writing.
Well, they were writing it.
They were writing it. Yeah. So when I did it, it didn't exist yet.
But at the end, did you?
Oh no! You know what? I should probably ask for it.
Well, what did they give you? Did they give you any kind of log line, like what the book was
They gave
about?
me. Actually, you know what? They did give me the option. They gave me 3 options. They gave me 3 summaries for 3 different books that were going to be written during the National Novel Writing Month, and I picked one and.
Are you even sure that it got written? Because
I have to double check.
So many of those are like get halfway through.
I have to double check.
Bad day. I'm not writing today, and then they just never get back on the horse.
I should double check. But in your case, you have both the book and you could do the cover. So
I did do the cover. Well,
you did.
I did do the cover in the I got a couple printed for people to read when I got the second draft done. It's not something in its current format I would ever promote. I kind of want to do something with it somewhere down the road, and I think there is a story there for sure, but that's where my head was at for so long, and I ended up in design, and maybe it's interesting. I've had an episode of my show a few months back about imposter syndrome, and I related a lot to the conversation, and I kind of feel like maybe I come out of that because I came into design the way that I did. Like it wasn't like I don't think I'd feel like an imposter if I had just pursued writing.
So you feel as an imposter as a designer?
Yeah. Or I relate. I shouldn't say I feel like an imposter as a designer. Like I know I can do good design,
Oh, you have imposter syndrome as a designer.
Right. But I don't think I would have those feelings as sharply about writing because I feel like I've been writing since I was a little kid. So it was like, well, I've earned this, whereas I was the kid who took art in my senior year of high school because I wanted a class that was going to be easy leading into lunch, like it wasn't like something like I'm so passionate about art. And frankly, I can easily shut it off now. It's like, I enjoy myself when I'm in the project, and especially those early stages. I actually today just like had a bit of a breakthrough with a project I was working on where it was like, that moment you're dreading it. Now you're loving it. And now I'm having that loving it phase. So I'm feeling good about design right now. So, but like I can easily turn it off. Like I can go home on the weekend and just be like, okay, I'm not touching a computer. I'm not opening InDesign. I'm not opening Photoshop. I'm not sketching anything,
But do you think that's because you're not as passionate about it? Or is it just that you are able to find a healthy limit?
Well, it might be compartmentalizing. I mean, and it might not even really be by choice. Like even if I wanted to, I have 2 little girls and
you have a family.
Yeah, exactly. And getting around to that, maybe I should have let off with it, but they definitely factor into happiness in a big way. I had this moment over the weekend, and again, thinking about this conversation, but my wife happened to be out of town. So it was kind of like, okay, well, after all the craziness in the morning, with like karate and ballet and swim lessons is out of the way, what are we going to do this afternoon? And my oldest daughter took it upon herself to get out this craft, this fairy house, this wooden fairy house that they could paint. And my oldest daughter's 9.5 and my youngest is 4. And she got it out for both of them, and she even got out the little tarp with Sesame Street characters all over it that we lay over the table so they don't get paint everywhere. And she did this all on her own without even telling me that they were going to be doing it. And so I got them some old T-shirts for smocks, and they're sitting there painting. And I'm like, well, if they're doing that, I'll bake some pumpkin bread. And it's purely from mix. I'm not a chef or cook or baker at all, but I was like, I'll bake this pumpkin bread that's sitting in the cupboard, and we'll put some music on the radio, and it was very quaint and very, very cool. And I really appreciate those little hidden moments. Yeah, like you can't. It's almost like you can't go looking for them. They just kind of appear organically with your kids, like because kids are trying, like you have these visions of how good your kids will be, like oh we'll go to the park and then we'll have a picnic and I mean it's so funny. We just got our family picture taken and the pictures came out wonderful. The car ride home was a nightmare. Like we just drove home going, you both are not watching TV for the rest of the weekend. You're grounded for the rest of the week. I can't believe you acted that way. And then it's like but
you look so happy.
Pictures,
you posted on
smiling.
Facebook and everyone's smiling and
right, exactly.
Happy family, and no one knows that you fought all the way home.
No, not at all. But yeah, it's just it's like you have this vision of what it was supposed to be and what it actually is. So it's great when you have those moments, and they're great kids. I love them both to death, and it's really awesome to see them grow. Just in little like spurts, so you get these little glimpses of like the people they're going to become. And it's just really cool. It's really cool when they can crack you up. And my oldest daughter Zoe said something to me last night. There was this construction paper. My wife needed construction paper for a project at work, and I was like, "Why did you buy all this construction paper?" And she was like, "Well, I had to buy construction paper because all the construction paper we had was in the craft bin, and every single piece had a green a stroke of crayon over on it." And my daughter just looked at me and shrugged and was like, "What can I say? I was young." And I was just like, I just burst out laughing. Like, and I don't even know if she did it. Like, it could have been Eliza. Who knows? But she just owned up to it. She just shrugged, like, gave this like, "Nah, what are you gonna do?" I was young. Exactly.
Do you relate to both of them at the same? In the same level? They're 4 and they're 9. Those age differences are not big, but at their age they are.
Oh no, it's definitely there's definitely differences there. I mean, I think it's funny that I always joke about how Eliza, my youngest, with Zoe, we were like had the camera in her face at all times, and we're documenting every single moment of her life. And with Eliza, it's like, I think we have some video of you somewhere, and it's a shame. I think it happens with every second child. Just from experience, from what I hear, it's like, everyone's like, yeah, we have no pictures of our second child. And
then if the third one comes along, the third one gets back in the spotlight. Right. And that's why we have middle child syndrome.
Well, we really had to get a family photo taken because, okay, she's 4. And if you walked into our dining room, the big picture in our dining room was the 3 of us when Zoe was 3, and we didn't even have the little picture like inserted into the frame of Eliza. Like, oh,
we weren't even trying.
Yeah, we weren't even trying. It was like, we got to do something about this. Like, we got to get some pictures taken. So now we have this big black and white picture of us in the dining room. So hopefully she won't remember anyway.
Yeah. So. I was going to say, thankfully you did it when she's 4, and she's probably not going to be traumatized yet. If this was at 15 and you only had the picture of the 3 of you.
Right, exactly.
That'd be a little...
But one of the benefits I think Eliza gets is the fact that it's the experience we had with Zoe. And I feel like, we can relate to her. We can access that part of our brain a little faster to, get down to her level and talk to her in a way that, she'll understand.
And Zoe got you tired of certain things, and then Eliza can just reap the benefits and just...
Well, yeah, I mean, they're very different kids, too. I mean, well, are they different kids? It's funny. Like, they're both super creative kids, but in different ways. I feel like Eliza will definitely be more... I don't know. It's so fun. It's so fun. So my daughter Zoe talks about being an author and an illustrator constantly. That's what she wants to do, which is kind of like, history repeating itself. Like, I'm not squashing that at all. I'm like, if that's what you want to do, then we'll do everything we can to make that possible. Like anything you want to do. But she's a fantastic actress too. And this isn't Stage Dad saying this. She's really good at acting. Like she loves to act. So we've been definitely encouraging that as much as she wants to do. And right now it's a little too much. And we've already told her, we're like, you're not doing a play in the spring. Like, she's in 2 plays right now. It's crazy. As we speak, my wife is, shepherding her and her friend from play practice home. And then it's like, there's homework, and it's just, it's way too much right now with all the extracurricular activities. But For Zoe and Zoe does do a lot of drawing, but for as much as she talks about wanting to be an author and an illustrator, Eliza at 4, it's like, if I can get that kid sitting down with a coloring book and crayons, it's like, I don't have to worry about it. It's like, I don't have to check on her. I know where she's going to be. She's very focused on what she's doing, and she seems to really enjoy it. Right now, she's drawing pictures for a friend a day at school. It's like, she'll tear this up. She'll be like, give this one to Jack. I want to give this one to Jack today.
Is that her own initiative?
Yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I don't even know where it came from. She just wanted it. She was like, can you tape this? And she like folded it all up. And it's just like a couple scribbles on the page, but it's like, she wants to give it to her friends, and,
so she's doing the trendy 1 picture a day without even knowing that
project, yeah.
Does she have 100 friends at school that she can do?
No. The poor daycare teacher that have that class.
Can you hire more kids so we can do more drawings? Another drawing per day. So I want to circle back, as you mentioned, Zoe wanted to be an author, wanted to be an illustrator, and history repeating itself. Is that something you're consciously thinking about? I don't want to do to her what happened to me, or
yeah, I think you just, it's funny. It's like, I think you just think that way as a parent, though. Like, and again, I don't want to make it sound like, I was not encouraged as a child. I definitely was. I don't really have that childhood trauma that, everybody's got their own thing, but I don't have anything that's like,
you're
interesting or salacious, child. Yeah, exactly. No, I was the oldest. I was the oldest grandchild on one side of the family, and I was, for a time until my sister came along, the youngest on the other side. So I got both ends of it, where it was like I was the cutest one and I was the first one. So it was like held up to all others.
I was the youngest for 11 years, and then I became the middle child. So I always joke that I have middle child syndrome.
You had 11 years, though, that you were the middle child.
But she took my younger child ranking, and, I was the youngest on my mom's side for 9 years. Then my cousins came along, and then my sister came along, and then I was no longer the youngest on my mom's side or at home. So they took my, Now,
what kind of relationship do you have with your sister, if you don't mind me asking?
It's great. She lives in Philly. She goes to Drexel, and now she just went to Israel for 5 months to do a co-op. It's interesting because I moved out of home when I was 19 to come here. I mean, I'm originally from South America, so I moved away from home at 19, went to college, and she was 8, and I would see her. I would go home for every break, so I would see her 4 times a year. But it's when you're 8 and 4 months go by, you become a different person.
Right.
So it was weird those years until now, the first 11 years, because she was still living at home. But now she lives in Philly, and I see her every week. We go out for lunch, and it's great to know her as an adult, and we can have adult conversations. She's 21, and we get along well. It's
with 11 years, you must not have that antagonistic relationship that like siblings who are much closer in age have.
Yeah, like my brother and I, we were completely different, and for a while he was considering coming to Philly to go to school, and I said, "Well, we can live together." My dad's like, "No way, you'll kill each other." We get along well. We have a great relationship. We talk. He lives in Israel, so I see him once a year.
So your family's scattered.
We're all over the world. Yeah. I mean, I'm Jewish. We migrate. 40 years in the desert. That was just the beginning. Now we just But yeah, I mean, but I do joke that I have middle child syndrome, but they don't let me. They don't let me own it. But yeah, I got along well. How do you get along with your sister?
I wish I saw her more. She lives in Nashville with my mom, and my sister live just outside of Nashville, and I love her to death. I wish I saw her more. But yeah, we get along great. But I think growing up, we had that antagonistic relationship. We were 4 years apart, so definitely.
So like Zoe and Eliza.
Well, Zoe and Eliza are 5.5 actually, and there is a sweet spot there, because it's funny because I feel like Lacey and I were definitely more antagonistic, and it's also the difference of brother sister versus sister sister. Zoe and Eliza are so lovey-dovey, like for the most part. They'll pull each other's hair and what have you, but Eliza loves her so much, and Zoe in return. But Eliza is just the most loving little sister, like just wants to hug her sister and run up. And she calls her sister half the time, like she doesn't call her by name. She's like, sister, so it's great. I couldn't ask for any more.
So, do they relate to each other as younger, older? Like my brother and I, we're a little under 2 years apart. So there was always, all right, he's the oldest one, so he plays the good guys, and I'm the younger one, so I play the bad guys when we were playing, He-Man or whatever. There was definitely a differentiation of him being the older one and not me being the younger one. With girls, do you think it's the same?
I don't know. Like, it's funny. They were playing either this past weekend or the weekend before, and they had completely taken over the house. We have a playroom, which became a playroom just because we had nowhere else to put toys. And they completely broke free of the playroom and took over the entire house. The living room was taken over with toys. The stairs were taken over with toys. Both their bedroom doors were wide open and everything was spread out. And they were very much like trading off being the sick one, and the other one had to take care of that one, and then one of them was having a party, so they had to go back downstairs into the living room to go to the party. But I don't know. I think they kind of trade off on the roles, like they kind of take turns. So I
think girls are a little more diplomatic. In that
maybe.
Maybe.
It might just be Zoe accommodating Eliza to some degree too, because she is younger, and, because I was going out for a run and I said, I was going upstairs. I think I was going upstairs to like grab my shoes or something. And on my way up, Zoe was like, tell Eliza she's invited to the tea party. And I went into popped my head into Eliza's room. I was like, your sister invited you to a tea party. And she's laying in the middle of the floor with a blanket pulled up to her chin. She's like, I'm sick. I was like, okay, I'll let your sister know. And I was like, Zoe, she's sick, so you might want to go check on her. And Zoe grabs the stethoscope and the bag and goes upstairs. So it's like, all right, I'm out.
You're just a messenger.
Yeah, exactly.
You just catalyze the storytelling and then let them take care of it. If we can go full circle. Sounds like you're pretty involved with them, not just taking them to activities, but you play with them and you sit down with them. Do you think that affects those moments you're talking about?
Yeah, for sure. Like, it was funny. Just recently with football season coming back, I'll usually put on like Sunday Night Football, days wrapping up, and they have those like, the package right before the game where they're just going through the game highlights, and I'll have that on in the background. And I guess it's essentially become tradition, but it's like Zoe and I will sit on the floor in the living room with the TV on in the background, and we'll play like a card game or a board game or something. And I really like to do that. I really try to do that whenever I can, because she just recently said to me, she was like, I like when football season comes back because we do this. And I was kind of like, and on one side I was like, that's great that she's like kind of formed that opinion and formed that memory. And then the other side of it, I was like, but it's only football season. It's like, we're only doing it during football season. Why don't we do this every Sunday night? Like, this should be something we're always doing. Like, it just so happened to be we're sitting here, I'm only half paying attention to the TV right now. So let's do something, but it's great. It's great because I enjoy that moment as well, because my attention is fully on her. That's background noise. My attention is fully on her in the game we're playing. Usually we play Spot It, which if you've never played it is a really addictive, fun kids card game.
Is that with the circles?
They're circular cards, and basically it's kind of interesting. I kind of want to get into the psychology of Spot It, to be honest, because what they do is there's like maybe like 6 or 8 different shapes or like different characters or different symbols on each card, and evidently every card, I don't know how the math of this works out, but you will always be able to find one thing in common with every card. So if you had a card and I had a card and we have the card in between us, there's something on the card in between us that one of us has on our card as well. And as soon as you see it, you're supposed to shout it out and lay it down. And then you just keep going. And usually you screw up the person across from me because they're just about they just about see the tree.
The commonality.
Right. But the other thing they change up, which I find interesting, is the sizing. So it's like, it might be a tiny tree on one card, and on your card, it's humongous. And you could just sit there and stare at that card, and you're like, there is nothing on this card that matters. And then you're like, oh, tree. And then you like lay down, just as she yells, lightning bolt, and then she gets it down before you, and you're like, oh, all right, now you got to start all over because there's a new card down, and you just keep doing it until you're out of cards. And whoever's out of cards first wins. There's a couple of different ways you could play it. But But I love the psychology. Like, I'd love to know like the way our minds work. It's just like taking in that information. Like, I've never looked into it, but
well, especially being a kids game, it's probably different.
Right.
Using all of them as a kid, and sometimes kids are even better than adults.
Oh, she beats me handily sometimes, But then there are days where it's like, for some reason, maybe the synapses are firing a little faster, and I'm just like tree, hand, person, car,
Like, yes, I'm a visual person.
Yeah, exactly.
Should be able to do this better.
Well, I kind of feel like it's one of those things that it's probably not a bad idea to do, because as far as like mental cognition, it does have to help in some regard. Like, it's got to be building up some kind of muscle in your brain, Like, yeah, for sure.
So you've described a few different kinds of moments that you share with them, but what are your favorite moments? Is there anything you look forward to just sharing with them, or is there anything you look back to fondly as your favorite moments? Yeah.
Specifically? I don't know if I could even just name one. Like I said, it's those moments where all the stars align and they're happy to be with you. You're happy to be with them. No one's fighting about that they're hungry or they want a snack or they want to get their face painted. And you know what I mean? It's like you could have a great moment and you want to try to replicate it. And even though it might have been really wonderful and you want to stay away from it. And my inclination is I want to stay away from it because that memory's great. And if I try to replicate it, there's no way I'm going to get close to where it was. And I think you'll be able to relate to this. So a couple of years ago, maybe it was like 2 or 3 at this point, I did the MS bike ride from Cherry Hill to Ocean City. And I loved it. It was great. It was a wonderful day. It was beautiful weather. Saw parts of New Jersey I never knew existed, and as far as like a personal challenge in terms of, like I'm not a super athletic guy, but that's definitely the biggest thing I've ever done. Like I've never run a marathon. I've never run a half marathon. But I mean, I've done Broad Street and 5Ks and the Philly 5 miler, but, or 10K. I'm sorry. I did the Philly 10K, but, but that was definitely probably the biggest thing I've ever done. And I've always loved bike riding. Definitely one of the things that makes me happy. And, you had that challenge of those bridges as you start heading into Ocean City.
At the very end, after you've already pedaled for 95 miles.
And it only started to occur to me as we approached. I was like, shit. I was like, I see these bridges in the distance. And I kicked those bridges' ass. Like, I felt so good at the end of it. And I got over the final bridge. Now it's just like coasting into town. And my wife and Zoe and Eliza was still pretty little. Like she was in Marissa's arms. But she was old enough to, know something was going on. They were there and Zoe had a sign and she was holding it up. And they got to see me cross the finish line. Like they were there. When I fit, like it timed out perfectly, like because they had hit traffic driving down, but they got out in time. They parked the car, they got to the finish line, and I was crossing, and I got to see them, and it was perfect. And I haven't done an MS bike ride since. and it must have been maybe it was 2 years ago no. So I did it, and then the next year it got canceled.
So you did it.
So I guess
this is 2016, 2015. You did 2014.
I guess so. Yeah. Yeah, that's probably right. Yeah, because it happened this year. You did it this year.
I did it this year. And if you want to ride again, and we're not going to allow Zoe and Eliza to go there, so you're not expecting that. But, Team Shashabu, my friend, Christine, Christine Fajardo? She's in the design community also, and her mom is living with MS. So we wrote in her name, and last year we trained for it, and it was the first year Christine was going to do it, and it got rained out. This year I barely trained at all. Christine was killing it, and we did again. I busted my foot, and just because I didn't train this year, but next year I'll train. I'll make sure that my foot is fine.
Well, it's funny. Like I didn't do any kind of like specific training, like or any kind of regimen. I started running a few years ago. Running's definitely one of the things that makes me happy. I started running, and it was mostly to get in shape. I I think I wore, actually, I don't even know if I could say this because now it's like, I don't know if I'm just overly critical, but I look at photos of myself. I'm like, Jesus, man, what's wrong with you? You know, like I was going to say, I thought I wore my weight well. I don't know that I did, but I was definitely overweight. And I just started losing weight, and I was partly watching what I ate and partly exercising and running. And gradually, the distances got further and further. And now I love to go for like a super long run. I love to do like 8 or 9 miles on a day, a weekend day, that where I can get away for like, an hour or so. What am I saying? An hour or so? I'm not doing 9 miles an hour. Hour and
That would
a
be
half.
awesome.
An hour and a half.
I do 9 miles an hour on a slow day.
But I love to get out. It's I find it super contemplative. I love to listen to podcasts or music while I'm running. But my mind's going the whole time too. Like I'm just like processing stuff. I'm just thinking about stuff. I'm thinking about what I'm listening to, but I'm also just thinking about other stuff. And sometimes there's crossover, there's tangents, or like maybe something comes up on a podcast, or I start thinking about something as it applies to my life. I listen to a lot of comedy podcasts, and I've been getting into listening to nonfiction lately. I can't listen to fiction. I love reading fiction.
You mean audiobooks as you're running?
Yeah, audiobooks. Right. But I can't listen to fiction. Like I'll lose track of where I am in the story. But I love listening to nonfiction. And I just love being out there and just kind of on your own and maybe running more so than biking, only just because you're unencumbered by the bike itself. Like you could just go for a run. You're like, I could go now if I wanted to run in pants and
why not?
Yeah, you're right. And a button-down shirt. Like I could go for a run. Yeah, I wouldn't look pleasant at the end of it, but I could just go running. It's like biking's I love going out to Valley Forge. I love going, riding those trails, or riding the Schuylkill River Trail. But it's become like going deep sea diving. Like I just feel like all the equipment, it's like, okay, you gotta have the special pants, and you gotta have the shirt, and get the belt with the water on it, the water bottles on it, and
you have to do it for at least 2 hours. You can't just go on a 20-minute ride, because then what's the point?
Why did I go through all that? Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So, and I love going for those 50-mile rides. And I think I only did that though, like maybe once before, like leading up to the MS bike ride. Like I went for one super long, I actually think I did 60 on the Schuylkill River Trail out past Valley Forge and then back. Like I parked in on Kelly Drive, and I just rode out past Valley Forge and then rode back. And I think I ended up going like 30 miles out and 30 miles back. And, it might not even have been that, but yeah, I think I just did like one bike ride, and then everything else was just running, like leading up to the bike ride, to the MS bike ride, and I did okay. I felt good. I think I did it in like 6 hours. And there's one wasn't there one that's over 2 days? Is there a ride back?
Yeah, so the same ride, if you stay in Jersey, they ride back another 75 miles. Right. I've only done the 1 day. I do the 100 miles, but that's it. The next day, I stuff my face at night, and I just go to bed and wake up late the next morning. I don't know.
You were talking about those memories that kind of, just, stick with you, and seeing them was the best part of the day at the end of that finish line. And, I know if I did it again, like I was thinking this the next year, and I was like, if I do it again this year, it's going to rain and it's going to be miserable, and they're not going to make it. And then I'm going to have to stand around and wait for them. And they're going to be stuck in traffic. And when they get there, Marissa's going to be angry. The kids are going to be screaming in the backseat. And I'll be like, why did I do this? Why did I push my luck? Like, I had this one good memory, and I couldn't just be satisfied.
Just preserve
with
it, let it be.
I'm just going to preserve it, But I think we'll do it again. I think for sure, like, especially now that Eliza's a little older, I'd love to just turn it into a weekend. Like maybe the girls go down the night before and have a night on the boardwalk, and I meet them down there the next day, and maybe we stay over again that night, and something, like
make new memories,
make it different for sure.
You create new memories.
Yeah, absolutely.
So normally it's easier for me to ask a question about what would be your perfect memory, but we talk about different things. Like what would make you happy in 20 years? Yeah,
I just want them to do something that they find fulfilling, for sure. And I definitely look at my neighbors who have 2 daughters who are, I believe believe their youngest, who was our babysitter, is graduating college this year. And I just kind of look at them and I'm like, I wonder if, watching them like go out into the professional world now and finishing up college, finishing up their, her bachelor degree. I kind of wonder if how that will compare to where we're at with the girls, when they're, graduating college and out in the workforce looking for a job and moving away from us most likely, like I have no illusions that they're going to stay close to the nest, like that's what kids are supposed to do. I kind of wonder how I'm going to handle that. It's kind of one of those weird things. It's like, you can't imagine not talking to your kid every single day, but I don't talk to my parents every single day. And I'm sure there'll come a time when I talk to the girls, maybe like once a week if I'm lucky, and
it's called being a teenager.
Well, yeah, but at least they'll be in the house, I mean, even that, it's like, that I don't know how much I want to think about. But I'm skipping that part. I'm imagining everything went all right, and and they're in college now. What's college going to look like when they're when they're of that age? I mean, we just look at how things are changing with higher education and for what they want to do. Like, maybe it won't make sense for them to go to college the way we did. I mean, they're not that far off, really. I mean, Zoe's 8 years away, really. But you never know. So,
and then flipping the script a little bit, when they're writing their own life story, how do you want them to think about you?
I hope they just remember me as being fun and, being able to make them laugh. Wrapping back around to storytelling, I sit with Zoe every night that we can, every night where we're not like backed up against like if you don't go to bed right now, you are not getting no sleep, because it always seems like bedtime keeps getting pushed back. But when we can sit down and read, like we're into book 6 of Harry Potter, and it's been really cool to relive that story with her and kind of watch it unfold through her eyes, and getting back to that second child syndrome in the back of my head. I'm going, I'm going to have to read these books again with Eliza. And I'm going, maybe she won't be that interested in Harry Potter.
Or Zoe will read them for her.
Yeah, I'll let Zoe read them to her for sure.
She knows the story. Just ask her.
Yeah, exactly. You know what? There are these movies. We'll have movie night. Well, it'd save some time because, I mean, we are averaging like maybe 2 to 3 nights a week if we're lucky where we actually can carve out the time to sit and read. And it's like book 5 felt like forever. Like I was joking with her. I was like, we are never going to get to the end of this book. We're reading like 2 pages a night and we're only reading like 3 nights a week. I was like, you just don't want to start reading this off on your own? I was like, go ahead. But she doesn't, she's, and I don't want her to, but she's definitely like, no, I like that we read this. So we're in book 6. Book 6 is a little shorter than book 5. I'm hoping we get through it a lot faster. Book 5's not that great. I'm completely reassessing these novels now. It's like, I loved them when they first came out. And it's like, upon a second reading, they're so fat. There's so much that could be like trimmed from these books. It's so excessive. I think the movies did a great job of, I mean, you could say they oversimplified some of them, especially like book 5. I don't know. Did you read the books?
I read the books. I watched movie 1 and I was so bored. Movie 2, I sort of watched. Movie 3 and 4, I didn't even care.
Movie 3 is probably the best one. Alfonso Cuarón directed that and probably did the best job. But David Yates, who I feel like did, if not 4, 5, and I think he didn't do 5, but I think he did like something like 4, 6, and both of 7, both, part 1 and part 2 of 7. And I think he's doing Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them. I don't know how much, I might be over crediting him, but I feel like he picked up the mantle really well, like really got it, what Alfonso Cuarón did with 3, because 3 is so different from 1 and 2. 1 and 2 are very much Christopher Columbus movies.
What do you mean by that?
Christopher Columbus, he's the guy who directed, he wrote Goonies and he directed Home Alone, and they feel very much like kids movies. Well, they are. They are kids movies, but he definitely elevated them to like, these characters are getting older. We need to, get older with the audience. They didn't keep it in that same that same tone.
This is how I'm with pop culture. That I'm thinking Christopher Columbus, like the character.
Chris Columbus. I guess he goes by. I added the Topher at the end. I guess he goes by Chris Columbus. But yeah. So, what was my point of bringing up Harry Potter? Oh, they're so excessive. I mean, so what we've been doing is we'll finish the book and we'll watch the movie, and we watched the fifth movie, which actually, if anything, cuts too much from the story. Like it's barely like a movie, like in terms of the book. It's like they just cut so much from it. But at the same time, you still got all the story from the movie, and you realize just how much excess there was in that book. And I'm not talking like I love reading a book and finding those like, those hidden little backstories and those trails that you want to go off on, but the author doesn't let you, like, just kind of teases you with. They're great, but there were just so many plot lines. It's like, and this was actually book 4, but that like Hermione is like trying to spearhead a organization for the
Albus's
no
army.
No. That's
later.
book 5. That's book 5. No, what's Dobby? He's a
the elf. The elves.
Yeah,
the house elves.
It was just such an unnecessary. I mean, it built her character, but like you got more of a sense of who she was as a character. But it just goes on, and like she brings that over into book 5 a little bit, and it's just like no, please, no more about this.
But you need him for the 7th book.
You need Dobby for the 7th book. Yeah, absolutely. You need that character, but I don't need Hermione fighting for his rights. I don't know. It was so extemporaneous.
Well, but think about spoilers. You need Hermione to fight for her rights to free him up so that then he can come back.
Well, he was free.
Yeah, at the very end.
No, he was free at the end of 2. Because Harry...
He was already free.
Yeah, he was already free.
I forgot that happened that early.
Yeah, he was free at the end of book 2.
So here's my big thing with the movies. My big issue. The first book, Hagrid's coat, you don't see it. Like, how the first book is Hagrid's coat and Harry goes into so I just realized I did like a very big cut and just putting something that was in my head since you started talking about the movies. But in the book, Hagrid's coat is like pockets and pockets and Harry goes into all of them. And in the movie, there's none of that and they could have solved that. But I think we're going to cut this out because I went in a circle. All right, Ryan, now let's move on to the rapid fire. I have a few questions about things that make you happy, and I just want your gut reaction. Are you ready?
Sure.
Who makes you happy?
My wife.
Is there a movie or a song that makes you happy?
You gotta say Star Wars at this point. I mean,
4, 5, 6, not 1, 2, 3.
Oh, yeah, 4, 5, 6 for sure. Yeah.
Who is the happiest person you know?
You know what? It might be Amanda Clark, actually. I feel she's one of my coworkers, and she's been on my show. She was actually the person who talked about imposter syndrome, but she is just a ray of sunshine all the time.
What is the happiest word you can think of?
I have no idea. I was trying to think of just what's the first word that comes to mind. I was like trombone. I don't know what.
Do you play the trombone?
Or have you played? Story. All right, so interesting story about trombone. Why it came to mind. So my father played the trombone. When it came time for me to pick an instrument, in school, and they're like, "We're having band. Would you like to be part of band?" I was like, "I'll play the trombone." My dad plays. We have one in the house. I'll play the trombone. I played the trombone for 2 years. I was not good. My daughter comes home the end of last year, with a sheet of paper saying that band starts next year, 4th grade. And unprovoked, never knew that her grandfather and her father once played the trombone. She said, "There's band next year, and I want to play the trombone." And I just kind of looked at her and I was like, I know for a fact we've never talked, because it's not a big part of my life. It never was anything that, really influenced me. And I was like, "You want to play the trombone?" I was like, what made you say that? Huh. I don't know. It's just a really cool instrument. I want to play it.
And she picked it? They didn't assign it to her?
They didn't assign it to her, no. She picked it. And
oh, wow.
I don't know what went into that decision-making process, but
Genetic memory.
that was really bizarre. I was like, well, if you want to play trombone, and you can, and just add that to the list of extracurricular activities that are just killing us now at the moment. All right, this is rapid fire. Let's go.
And then I find myself asking this one a lot, but I really do like it. What is the earliest happy memory you can think of?
Again, just going to the first thing that pops into my head, I have this very visceral memory of running into my grandparents' front room when my Aunt Alice was there. My Aunt Alice would have been my great-great aunt, actually. And she lived a very long life. And I remember, I don't know why, I just remember being excited to see her and running into the room. And I must have been like, if I was out of diapers, I'd be surprised. Like, it's one of those memories. So one of those ones that has no context, but just comes up, in your head. I don't know why, but that definitely rings true of happiness to me for some reason, seeing this person and running into the room.
And I never knew this question would get so many great answers, but I'm just fascinated at you were saying you weren't even out of diapers, how we can remember so early on. Yeah,
I have a couple of weird memories like that, and you don't even realize how weird they are in terms of, like, I have this very, very frightening memory of my father. My father did construction, and he was over on our neighbor's roof doing roofing. But I remember being very frightened for him and thinking he was going to fall, like, from our backyard. Like, I remember the angle. I remember everything of, like, looking up at him, and think of a child, how far up a second story roof looks to a child. It just looked like he was like King Kong on top of a skyscraper. I mentioned that to him once, and he was baffled because he was like, when I did that, he's like, you couldn't have been more than 2. You couldn't have been.
Oh, wow.
And unless he's misremembering, but I'm like, well, maybe that just burned, into the emulsion of my brain, because I have a very clear memory of it. And again, it's out of context. Like, I don't remember anything before it. I don't remember anything after it. I remember crying, but...
Well, maybe now it's less, not less, if it makes more sense that Zoe remembers the trombone, even though she never heard of it.
I don't know. Yeah.
There's some cosmic memory happening there.
Yeah, who knows? I mean, maybe it came up. I don't think it has ever come up. It's not something that I relive with, passion. Be like, oh, remember those 2 years I played the trombone and I couldn't wait to quit, it's not something I recall fondly, but I don't know. It's bizarre.
So it's great hearing all the things to make you happy. I've obviously been listening to your podcast for a while, so it's good to have this conversation in person. And for everyone listening, if you're listening when this comes out on Monday, come back on Tuesday to iTunes and find High Res on iTunes, because I will be on that conversation. But else from the podcast, or including the podcast, if people want to learn more about you or find you anywhere.
Well, you can find me at ryanstarrdesign.com. You see some of the work I've done over the years. You can visit highresPod.com, check out the show. We didn't even really talk about it, but podcasting is one of the things that makes me very happy. It's probably the happiest that I am right now creatively, like in a creative outlet, is doing podcasting. I mean, we could talk about it on your episode. We'll continue this conversation, but I'm very curious to hear your thoughts on the format as well.
Well, and the conversation doesn't end because we're recording back to back. So come back tomorrow to iTunes and find High Res. Thank you so much for sharing what makes you happy.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you, Ryan, for sharing what makes you happy. And thank you for having me on your podcast. I had a great time chatting about what makes you happy, about design and life. For everyone listening, thank you for downloading this episode. And don't forget to go to highresPod.com or search for High Res on iTunes to listen to great conversations with Philadelphia creatives. My episode will drop November 8th, just in time to listen while you wait to vote. A special thanks to Jason Zappolo for editing this episode, Oli Margulies for help with social media, and Rocio Castañeda for ongoing support. You can get this episode with show notes at thehappypodcast.com/episode 36, and you can get past episode and learn more about this project at thehappypodcast.com. We are on social media. Please find us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at The Happy Podcast. And you can find our most recent episodes on YouTube, youtube.com/thehappypodcast. If you liked today's episode, please go to iTunes, find us and subscribe for weekly updates on your device. If you want others to find this podcast, please go to iTunes and leave a 5-star review. That's the best way for others to learn about this project. Thank you for listening, and please join us tomorrow, November 8th on High Res, and next week, back here.